Evacuate now. That's the warning to thousands of residents on the Spanish island of La Palma after volcanic eruption there. The lava already has destroyed an estimated 100 homes as it creeps unpredictably toward the ocean. The major headline tonight involving children and the fight against COVID-19. Pfizer says their vaccine is safe for children ages 5 to 11, and they will ask the FDA for emergency use authorization. We take a closer look at what the new data shows and when your child might be eligible for the shot, as the U.S. COVID-19 death toll, now approximately 675,000 lives lost, surpasses the number killed during the Spanish flu of 1918. The growing crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border as federal officials deliver a clear warning.
Your journey will not succeed, and you will be endangering your life and your family's life.
The conditions in Del Rio, Texas, deteriorating by the day, with thousands of migrants living in makeshift camps under the bridge into the United States, many arriving from Haiti, as dramatic images show Border Patrol on horseback enforcing the border. The search for Gabby Petito could now become a search for her killer after authorities announced a grisly discovery in a Wyoming national park. They say the likely remains are of the young woman who vanished last month under suspicious circumstances. The FBI has now executed a search warrant at her boyfriend's Florida home. He's not been seen in nearly a week. A humanitarian whose heroism inspired the critically acclaimed film Hotel Rwanda and an Oscar-nominated portrayal by Don Cheadle has been sentenced to 25 years in prison for terror charges. His shelter is believed to have saved 1,000 lives during the 1994 genocide there. We speak to his daughter about what they call a sham trial and what's next. And in the city of Houston, Texas, 1 in every 3 adults is functionally illiterate. Tonight, what's driving this alarming reality and what's being done right now to change it.
The biggest goal you have that you want to do when you can read perfectly?
Be able to teach others, because something that I never had.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. We begin tonight with a grim, perhaps even at one time unthinkable milestone. 18 months into the coronavirus pandemic, the virus has now claimed more American lives than the Spanish flu pandemic a century ago. 675,722 Americans have died from COVID-19. Like the flu, COVID may never entirely disappear, but doctors hope that it becomes a mild seasonal bug as immunity strengthens through vaccination and repeated infection. And tonight there's also development that many parents of young children have been eager to hear now for several months. Today, Pfizer released new trial data that shows their COVID-19 vaccine is safe and effective for children between the ages of 5 and 11. Pfizer's trial involved more than 2,200 children given 2 doses of the vaccine at lesser strength. The drug maker says that they intend to submit for FDA emergency use authorization. So how soon before it's available to children who are now back at school already? And what about those 3rd booster shots for Americans over the age of 65? Eva Pilgrim leads us off tonight with the latest.
Tonight, a critical step bringing younger children closer to vaccination.
1, 2, 3.
Pfizer announcing its vaccine is safe and effective for children ages 5 through 11. After giving more than 2,200 young participants a smaller dose, 1/3 the amount given to adults, the company says the vaccine caused minimal side effects, similar to those seen in adults and older children. And the antibody response with that smaller dose was at least as strong as it was in patients 16 to 25 with the full adult dose.
Since we know that 16 to 25-year-olds are protected, and antibody is a good measure of that protection. Having matched that antibody response, we're likely to match the protection.
8-year-old Sebastian Preibel participated in the Pfizer trial at Duke, but doesn't know if he got the vaccine or a placebo. His first shot was on September 1st.
He did have a sore arm after it. He had a low-grade fever, but he's been fine.
You just gotta do it. It's something that can help the world get back to normal, and no one wants COVID to go on forever.
Pfizer now plans to submit its trial data by the end of the month. The FDA could take weeks to give the green light.
I think there's a really good chance it will be before Halloween.
Vaccines for the young can't come soon enough, with more than 1 million children infected with COVID in just 5 weeks. And health officials warn they're seeing long hauler symptoms in 2 to 3% of child cases. Hudson Beard was a healthy 13-year-old in Montana when he got sick with COVID last fall. Months later, he was still in constant pain, asking Dr. Fauci for help at a forum.
Every day when I wake up, I have constant migraines, severe headaches, and I'm super dizzy. My stomach hurts. I vomit. No other doctors can help me. Can you help me?
We don't know enough about it, Hudson, for me to honestly tell you what's going to happen over the next couple of months to a year.
After months of physical therapy in and out of hospitals on multiple medications, Hudson finally turned a corner over the summer, and he's back in school, getting stronger every day.
My word to people is really listen to your children, and when they do have symptoms or they're not recovering from COVID, take action.
And tonight, millions more Americans could get their booster shots starting by the end of the week once the FDA and CDC sign off on an advisory panel recommendation for high priority groups, including Americans 65 and older, people at high risk of severe COVID, such as patients with obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure, along with frontline workers like teachers and healthcare workers.
So many eager to get that shot for their young children. Eva Pilgrim joins us now. So with this data from Pfizer that the smaller dose works well in children between 5 to 11 years old, just walk us through the timeline of the authorization process and how soon we might be able to see younger children getting vaccinated.
So, Lindsay, Pfizer says they will begin applying for that authorization for 5 to 11-year-olds starting at the end of the month. If that process goes like we've seen it go for the older groups, that means we could potentially be seeing shots into arms for millions of elementary school kids by Halloween. Lindsay?
And on those booster shots for those who are older than 65 and other at-risk populations, what's the timeline for that authorization and potential rollout?
So, Lindsay, we've heard from the FDA's independent advisory panel. We should have an answer from the FDA sometime this week. We should also have the ultimate answer from the CDC, which will give us a better sense of when those boosters will roll out for those 65 and up. Lindsay?
Eva Pilgrim, our thanks to you. For more on this, I'm joined now by my former ABC News colleague and former acting CDC director, Dr. Richard Besser, now president and CEO of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Thanks so much for joining us, Dr. B.
Great to be here, Lindsay.
So first, just put into context how significant Pfizer's announcement is today about the vaccine now being safe and effective for children who are 5 to 11 with regard to the big picture as far as trying to finally get this pandemic under control.
Well, you know, Lindsay, I won't feel comfortable with the data until it's been reviewed by FDA and independent scientists. But I don't think we are going to get this pandemic under control until we have vaccines for all age groups. And you know, as a pediatrician, as a parent, I'm thankful that younger children do much better with this infection than older people. But that being said, there have been over 5 million cases in children, and currently there are about 300 hospitalizations in children every week. And so it's not something that we should trivialize in terms of the direct impact on kids. I'd be very excited to have a safe and effective vaccine I could recommend to my patients.
And what should parents understand as far as the safety and effectiveness of the smaller dosage that Pfizer is saying would be used for those who are under the age of 12?
Yeah, I mean, there's some challenges in doing these kinds of approvals for children, because what you'd like to know is, you know, how good this vaccine is at preventing disease, at preventing severe disease, preventing hospitalizations, and preventing kids from dying. But that would take an enormous study, given how mild the infection is in most children who get it. And so the types of studies that they do, they look to see, does the vaccine give the same antibody levels, the same levels of protective factors in young children than it does in others? And then the conclusion is, if it gives that same kind of response, it will be as protective. Until it's used in larger populations, you won't be able to do the studies to say say, okay, it's 90% effective or 80% effective. And until it's used in larger populations, you won't be able to know, are there rare side effects in younger children you didn't see in other populations? Because this trial was only done in less than 3,000 children, and many of the side effects that we've seen in adults, that we've seen in older children, didn't show up until it was given to millions of people.
And we're still seeing vaccine hesitancy among some adults, of course. Any concern that there might be even more hesitancy when it comes to vaccinating young children, regardless of what the data shows as far as the safety of it?
Well, I think there will be more hesitancy. I think we're going to see the public breakdown into those parents who will have their children in line the first day that it's available because they truly want to have the peace of mind of sending their kids to school fully vaccinated. You'll have some who are on the fence and want to wait and see what happens as it's rolled out to tens and hundreds of thousands of children. And then you'll have some parents who say absolutely not, just like we see with adults. So it will break down. I would not be surprised if there are more parents who are hesitant about giving it to their children than they are about getting it themselves.
Right. And what about those parents with a 3 or 4-year-old who they want to get vaccinated? They won't be part of this expanded group if it's authorized. Explain why there's this dividing line, and when could those youngest age groups be eligible in the future?
Yeah, so the trials are still being done. They need to get more children in those younger age groups to be able to determine, again, whether those children get the same levels of antibody response. And my understanding is it won't be before the end of the year that any of the companies, and I think Pfizer is first in line again, to be able to present that data.
For children who are older than 12 who are already eligible to take the vaccine, we've seen some school districts now mandating those vaccines. Where do public health officials stand on doing that? Is that the best way to get more children vaccinated, or does it only add to the political divide on this issue by making it a mandate?
Yeah, you know, I think the nation is pretty divided when it comes to mandates. I think that there is a strong case to be made for vaccine mandates in those for whom they're eligible. And when you think about what the experience would be like for children in middle school and high school, if vaccines were required, it would be a very different story. If vaccines were only an issue of protecting the individual who was getting vaccinated, it would be one thing, but they're critically important to protecting those people around that individual, those who can't get vaccinated, and people with all kinds of immune problems, medical conditions where they didn't get a good response. So I tend to come down in the vaccine mandate camp. As an employer, we're requiring anyone who comes into our building to be fully vaccinated. And I think that ensures that all of our workers at our institution are safe. I think it's the way to go.
Lastly, Dr. B, we know that for the vast majority of this pandemic, it's still a pandemic of the unvaccinated. So where do you see us right now on the trajectory of getting this Delta variant under control and reducing cases, and most importantly, the hospitalizations and deaths?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the curves, it's starting to come down in the United States. It's not fully understood why the pandemic seems to cycle in these waves, but it looks like thankfully we're coming down. But it's at a time where we're also coming into the fall, we'll be coming into the winter, and I worry that if we don't get first-time vaccinators, if we don't get that number to go up, this will be a very, very difficult winter as we see the flu arrive, we see other viruses arrive, and we see fewer people being willing to wear masks for yet another winter.
And perhaps a lot more people going indoors as well on top of all of that. Dr. Richard Besser, always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Lindsay. Great talking with you.
Now to the growing controversy tonight at the southern border surrounding those estimated 10,000 migrants huddling under a bridge in Del Rio, Texas, in the heat and horrific conditions, many of them from Haiti. And new images tonight of U.S. border agents on horseback, raising new questions about how they are treating some of the migrants. ABC's Kenneth Moten is in Del Rio for us tonight.
Tonight, this new video of Haitian migrants at the southern border, the chaos and despair. Images showing Border Patrol agents on horseback as they try to stop them from crossing the river into the U.S. The White House seeking answers.
I've also seen the video. I can't imagine what the scenario is where that would be appropriate. It's obviously horrific, the footage.
These chaotic scenes along the Rio Grande coming as the U.S. faces a crush of migrants, many of them Haitian, in the border town of Del Rio. The U.S. now stepping up deportation flights to Haiti and other countries.
Our borders are not open, and people should not make the dangerous journey. If you come to the United States illegally, you will be returned.
At least 10,000 men, women, and children still under that Del Rio International Bridge in deplorable conditions.
This was the main point of entry for those migrants. Border Patrol officials say thousands of them, many with children, taking this narrow and treacherous path across the Rio Grande.
The Department of Homeland Security now working feverishly to process them. Today, the DHS secretary defending the deportations under the Trump-era Title 42, which allows for swift expulsion of migrants due to COVID concerns. The Biden administration exempting unaccompanied minors and many families. For now, the agency planning to send up to 3 flights a day or more to expel migrants they say have no valid claim to stay in the U.S. A nearby port of entry also closed temporarily to slow the surge. Haitians, some with young children, seen landing in Port-au-Prince. Across the river in Acuña, Mexico, this Haitian immigrant telling our team he left Haiti 4 years ago and now fears he'll be sent back. I know we're doing something illegal, he said, but we're looking for a better future. If you realize what Haiti looks like now, the earthquake, the assassination of the president, gangs fighting for power, they forget about the people, so the people run away.
There's so many reasons for why people feel that desperation to leave. Kenneth Moten now joins us from Del Rio, Texas. Taking a step back here for a moment, do officials know how all of these Haitian migrants got to the southern border, and why do they think that this is a more viable route than crossing into Florida?
That is the big question, Lindsay, because we know that, as with the immigration issue, it's complicated. Immigration officials here, Border Patrol officials, they say that they know that several of these migrants came from Haiti. Many of them are from Haitian descent, but also they know that several Haitian migrants were already in South America, and they decided to make the journey through South America, through Mexico, and across the U.S. border here. So the answer to your question is there are some who immediately came from Haiti, and there are some who have been waiting in South America for this moment to cross that border. Lindsay?
And Kenneth, you also just spoke with the Del Rio mayor. What did he have to say?
Well, he commented on that image that we showed you in the piece there that everyone is talking about this agent, that Border Patrol agent on a horse trying to wrangle these migrants there on the banks of the Rio Grande. He says, don't take that out of context, that what he's seen as a humanitarian effort by the agents on the ground here, the heroic agents, he said. He says he's seen them give them food and water and be there for those who are suffering under that bridge right now, but they're trying to contain those who are going back and forth from Mexico into the U.S. and from the U.S. to Mexico as they get food and water as well. And he says, you just don't know who you're encountering. Are they smugglers? Are they people seeking asylum? And at that point, we know that image is under investigation. So he says he's asking people not to take it out of context and wait for the findings of the investigation by federal officials.
Yes, some really powerful and moving images there. Kenneth Moten, our thanks to you. Tonight, President Biden is in New York ahead of his first address to the United Nations tomorrow morning. The UN General Assembly will be in person this year with COVID protocols in place. On the eve of the big speech, the administration moving to ease some restrictions on visitors from abroad. This comes after the president infuriated France over a nuclear submarine deal with Australia. Cecilia Vega joins us now. Cecilia, Biden pledged in the campaign to restore America's standing on the world stage, but he's hit some major setbacks, including with Afghanistan withdrawal. So what is the president hoping to achieve this week?
Well, this is really, Lindsay, about resetting, and you really just set it up really well here. This is the biggest international stage that the president will be on and has been on in his presidency, so he's got a huge audience here. But look, the White House can say, and their message is that this is a chance for the president to reset. He wants to come out here and say that he, under no circumstances, wants to start a Cold War, that he is promising everything, making good on all of those promises from the campaign, that America is back, and that he is committed to these relationships with these allies. But then there's the reality. He is coming here with so many questions over everything that you just laid out from these allies. They don't want to just hear the words from President Biden and this White House. They want to see some action on it. France is a really big one. This is one of our most important allies. They're so mad about that nuclear submarine deal with Australia that they recalled an ambassador over it. You've got that chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan, relationships rocky with Britain because of that. They urged the U.S. to keep troops groups at that Kabul airport passed that August 31st deadline and were rebuffed on those requests. Others, like Germany, so frustrated with the president's tough take on China right now. So all of those things will come to a head here tomorrow. But again, Lindsay, these allies, they don't want to just hear words right now. They want to see that this is a different administration from what they went through for the last 4 years under President Trump.
Right, they want to see that action. And Cecilia, the UN General Assembly using an honor system for leaders when it comes to vaccination status, but a bit of controversy surrounding Brazil's President Bolsonaro's planned speech tomorrow. New York City's mayor telling him to stay away if he's not vaccinated.
Yeah, he's saying, hey, you got to follow by the city rules. And New York City rules say that you can't be you have to be vaccinated in order to come inside a venue like this with all of these people here. But Jair Bolsonaro, he is a notorious vaccine skeptic. He has bragged about not getting the vaccine. Nonetheless, he's in town. His folks, his team actually posted a picture of the president and the team on the streets of New York outside eating pizza. Presumably that's because if you're not vaccinated in the city, you also can't go and eat inside at a restaurant. But Lindsay, I'll tell you, right across the street from me, just out of a vision from this camera, there is one of these mobile vaccine trucks. They've got a van here. If any world leader like Bolsonaro would like to get a vaccine, it's just right over there. We'll get
one on the spot. Cecilia Vega, thanks so much. Now to some troubling new developments in the search for Gabby Petito, who her body was discovered potentially during a cross-country trip with her boyfriend. He's now also missing. In Wyoming, a remote campground has been shut down after the discovery of that body that could be hers. While in Florida, the FBI executed a search warrant at her boyfriend's home. ABC's Trevor Ault has the very latest from Florida tonight.
Tonight, law enforcement raiding the Florida family home of Brian Laundrie, one day after a body believed to be his girlfriend Gabby Petito was found in Wyoming.
I'm going to need you guys behind the tape. You're in the crime scene, please, behind the tape.
Video from the Daily Mail shows armed FBI agents and police with a shield and battering ram, temporarily moving Laundrie's parents into an FBI van and towing away the car. Officials said Brian's family told them he left at a nature reserve before disappearing. But neighbor Karen Abert says that's not true.
The Mustang was definitely not gone Wednesday, Thursday.
No cars moved Wednesday or Thursday at all.
Today's raid coming hours after investigators ended a search for Laundrie in that alligator-infested marshland. Their canine units failing to pick up Brian's scent.
You could be out here for months if you wanted.
Officials now awaiting autopsy results on what's believed to be Gabby's body, found Sunday at a remote campsite near Grand Teton National Park. Our Will Carr is there.
This is a massive campsite in a very isolated part of Wyoming. Authorities have it shut down for miles, and they're turning people away, searching for clues here as we're waiting to learn the cause of death.
Brian, still a person of interest in Petito's disappearance. This body camera footage showing a confrontation between the couple days prior. And today, officials releasing chilling new audio of the 911 call.
We drove by and the gentleman was slapping the girl.
He was slapping her?
Yes, and then we stopped. They ran up and down the sidewalk. He proceeded to hit her, hopped in the car, and they drove off.
And tonight, ABC News obtaining a previous search warrant with the final text from Gabby's phone to her mother. It reads, "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemails and missed calls." But Stan is Gabby's grandfather. Gabby's mother telling investigators she never called him Stan and was concerned something was wrong, adding that final message was not normal behavior.
A lot that is seemingly not normal about all of this. Trevor Ault joins us outside of Brian Laundrie's family home in Northport, Florida. And Trevor, police have also spoken with a woman who claims that Laundrie was hitchhiking in Grand Teton National Park around the time of Gabby's disappearance. What did she tell them?
Well, Lindsay, that woman, Miranda Baker, says she and her boyfriend picked up Brian Laundrie, and he was normal at first. He talked about how he had been away from his girlfriend for a few days and that she was off working on their social media. But as the drive went on, he abruptly said that they were heading the wrong direction and that he needed to be dropped off right then. They said they let him out of the car, and 10 or 15 seconds later, he had disappeared. Lindsay.
And what have we heard from the families of both Gabby Petito as well as Brian Laundrie since these new developments in the past 24 hours?
Well, we've heard a wide range of responses, as you can imagine, Lindsay. Gabby's family is, of course, asking for privacy as they are grieving. We've seen a tweet from her father where he said that his daughter touched the world. The only member of Brian Laundrie's family who has spoken publicly in this entire ordeal is his sister, Cassie. She has said that she is heartbroken at the loss of Gabby. She shared with us some of the final text messages that Gabby had sent her, some postcards that she had sent on this cross-country road trip, and they all seem to be very caring about Brian's nieces and nephews, Cassie's children. She referred to herself as Aunt Gabby. The more nuclear family of Brian and his parents have only been speaking through their attorney, and they released a statement yesterday saying they were heartbroken at the news that Gabby was found deceased. And we are expecting to hear at least a little bit more from that attorney, Lindsay, because he has now scheduled a press conference for tomorrow afternoon. Lindsay?
Trevor, our thanks to you. When we come back, police rush to the scene. Students heard in chaos in another American school with a gunman on the loose. How authorities were able to stop the latest school shooting after several hours. You might be surprised to learn just how many Americans are unable to read at a level high enough to hold down a job. We meet one man who's going through his day by memory and the organization helping him to learn to read. But up next, how do you go from an international darling of Hollywood to being convicted of terrorism? It's a remarkable fall from grace for the man who inspired the leading role in Hotel Rwanda. But was his trial fair? Stay with us.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it.
Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
When you wake up in the morning, let's do this. Yes. I'll be by your side. I'll be there by your side.
Good Morning America.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're going to move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people
squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new Hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
U.S. forces launched a strike on a senior al-Qaeda leader in Syria. According to U.S. military officials, the Pentagon claims there were no civilian casualties and that they got who they were targeting, but they offered no details beyond that. Next to the stunning fall from grace for a man who was once a darling of Hollywood, Human Rights Watch is calling the trial of the man who inspired the 2004 critically acclaimed film Hotel Rwanda, quote, flawed. Yet he now faces decades behind bars for terrorism-related offenses. Maggie Rulli has been following this trial since the beginning and has more on the case and why the State Department is also now saying they're concerned.
Tonight, a Rwandan court sealing the fate of Paul Rusesabagina, the man who was once a darling of the international community, even inspiring the Oscar-nominated film Hotel Rwanda.
Look at them. These are not rebels. Soon they will be worthless to you. Why not take some money for your work? How much?
Rusesabagina now found guilty of forming an illegal armed group and being a member of a terrorist organization. He was sentenced to 25 years in jail. We spoke with his daughter Corrine after the verdict was read, in what she says was a sham trial.
He's innocent. He's a human rights defender, and he has so much love in his heart, and he's so calm and warm, and people know this. The way that the Rwandan government is trying to change the perception of him internationally, this propaganda machine, this false allegations, this is just because he knows that the world likes my father.
Last year, Rwandan prosecutors charged Rusesabagina with 13 terror-related offenses, including financing terrorists, complicity in murder, and forming a rebel group. He had previously said the current government was the enemy of the people and called for any means possible to bring about change. Rusesabagina has maintained his innocence.
What is the mood there like right now as you're watching these verdicts come in?
So it's not a surprising day, but it's still nonetheless a difficult one. It's quite a strange experience actually to watch a judgment be pronounced when you already know the outcome.
Rusesabagina's conviction is an extraordinary fall from grace. The release of Hotel Rwanda heroically portrayed Paul Rusesabagina helping more than 1,000 people take shelter in Hotel Mille Collines during the 1994 Rwandan genocide. From there, he quickly ascended to fame, giving highly paid speeches around the world and even receiving the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Without that shelter, every one of them would almost surely have been killed during those weeks and months of merciless terror.
But in recent years, Rusesabagina's luster had faded. He had also become an outspoken critic of Rwanda's President Paul Kagame, his family saying that made him a target.
President Kagame, or the dictator Kagame, has tried to kill our father several times before and harassed him. He has followed him at events, conferences. They've broken into our home.
What did he say to you the last time you spoke?
He hopes that the international community is watching.
Rusesabagina, who is a permanent U.S. resident and whose family lives in San Antonio, alleges he was kidnapped by Rwandan authorities August last year, something Rwanda's president has vehemently denied.
There was no kidnap, there was no any wrongdoing in the process of his getting here.
Strongman President Paul Kagame is often called the darling tyrant. The U.S. is one of his staunchest allies and oldest supporters, and some credit him with turning the country into an economic powerhouse for the region in the years after the genocide. President Kagame has been consolidating power now for decades and is known for sniffing out his enemies. Rusesabagina claims he was tricked by a pastor into boarding a private jet while transiting in Dubai, thinking he was going to speak at churches in Burundi. Instead, the plane landed in Rwanda, where he was promptly arrested. The U.S. Department of State reacting to Rusesabagina's verdict, saying, "We are concerned by the objections Mr. Rusesabagina raised related to his lack of confidential, unimpeded access to his lawyers and relevant case documents, and his initial lack of access to counsel. We urge the government of Rwanda to take steps to examine these shortcomings." Rusesabagina's family is now determined to get him out.
I believe my father will come home. I mean, he's innocent. We're not discouraged.
Maggie Rulli for ABC News.
Our thanks to Maggie for that. Still ahead here on Prime. New state, new charges, similar plea of not guilty from disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein. We'll have more on his latest legal challenge. Could there be more indictments filed against executives at the Trump Organization? And the grim milestone, the COVID pandemic has now taken more American lives than the 1918 Spanish flu. We take a look by the numbers. But first, our tweet of the day, mega band BTS taking over the United Nations.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
Yeah. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out.
The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
what is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
Hours, Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
Robin Roberts, George Stephanopoulos, Michael Strahan. Wake up with America's #1 most watched morning show. ABC's
Good Morning America.
When you wake up in the morning, let's do this. I'll be by your side. I'll be there by your side.
Good Morning America.
Welcome back, everyone. Tonight, we report a dismal milestone. More Americans have now died from COVID-19 than from the 1918 Spanish flu, a pandemic that experts had described as the deadliest in human history. But the comparisons aren't really so straightforward, as we explain by the numbers. At least 675,722. That's now the U.S. death toll from COVID-19, according to data collected by Johns Hopkins University. While the 1918 influenza pandemic killed an estimated 675,000 here in the U.S. and at least 50 million people worldwide. But while the U.S. death tolls from the two pandemics are now similar, the populations are not. Approximately 105 million people lived in the USA a century ago, compared to roughly 330 million today. So per capita, the Spanish flu was far more deadly. 2.5% was the fatality rate for the 1918 influenza, compared to 1.6% for COVID-19. Put it another way, 1 in 500 Americans have died from COVID-19, while a century ago, about 1 in 152 Americans died of the Spanish flu. Also today, of course, we have highly effective COVID vaccines and more advanced medical treatments. Nearly 182 million Americans are fully vaccinated for COVID, and that number is growing, giving us hope that we can soon turn a corner on this modern-day plague. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime tonight. The stars were out as the best shows in TV were honored at this year's Emmys, but why one of those shows, The Queen's Gambit, is being sued by the first female chess grandmaster. How can 1 in 3 adults in one of America's largest cities be functionally illiterate, and what's being done to change that? But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
World News Now.
And America This Morning.
The best new video.
The breaking news overnight.
Emergency crews called to the town of Surfside.
U.S. airstrikes hitting targets in Iraq and Syria.
The stories people are talking about.
You don't want to shave your legs? Don't. I was going to say.
Oh my. Got it.
And what to expect in the day ahead.
ABC World News Now and America This Morning.
Starting at 2 a.m. Eastern.
Up all night to keep you up to date.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new Hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
The world may feel out of your control, but your happiness doesn't have to be. Learn the secrets to happiness. Listen to the 10% Happier podcast, free on Apple Podcasts.
When you wake up in the morning,
Let's do this!
I'll be by your side. I'll be there by your side.
Good morning, America.
This is GMA3, what you need to know. GMA3.
A third hour of Good Morning America in the afternoon.
It's all about you. Lunchtime on ABC.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're going to move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
Pfizer says its COVID-19 vaccine is safe for children 5 to 11. The drug maker is expected to seek emergency use authorization.
The company says their trial data shows that when the more than 2,200 children received 1/3 of the vaccine dose given to adults, the side effects were minimal and similar to adults and older children as well. Pfizer's news comes as hospitals are seeing record number of pediatric patients. As hospitals see these upticks, the debate over COVID policies in schools rages on. If this vaccine for young children is approved, almost every K-12 student in the country will be eligible. While Pfizer plans to pitch for federal approval, the Biden administration now defending its August announcement that booster shots for all fully vaccinated Americans could start as soon as this week.
On Wall Street, the Dow and NASDAQ both off more than 2%.
The declines mirrored losses overseas. Investors are concerned the U.S. Federal Reserve may soon signal it's planning to pull back some of the support measures that have propped up the economy.
At one point during early trading, the Dow was down more than 800 points.
Disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein pleaded not guilty in court once again today to charges of rape and sexual assault. He had pleaded not guilty to the same charges in July, shortly after he was extradited to Los Angeles from New York. But a judge dismissed one of the charges because the statute of limitations had run out. A grand jury amended the indictment to include a May 2010 incident. Weinstein's lawyer said he is in poor health and can't walk or see. A trial is not expected until next spring. Weinstein is already serving a 23-year prison sentence in New York after he was found guilty last year of sexual assault and rape.
France, still furious over the new UK-US-Australia defense deal, has canceled a planned defense meeting with the UK.
France postponing a meeting between French Defense Minister Florence Parly and her British counterpart Ben Wallace. The two were set to meet and address a meeting organized by the Franco-British Council, but France is still furious the US announced a new defense deal with Australia and the UK that effectively killed France's pre-existing deal with Australia. That caused France to lose $90 billion. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson insists Britain's relationship with France is still strong.
A tent in downtown Los Angeles was the site of last night's Emmys.
The Crown.
But its biggest winners were celebrating in London as The Crown ruled. 7 Emmys in all.
Making The Crown has been the most rewarding 2 years of my life.
With host Cedric the Entertainer vowing a love fest for television and an homage to the late Biz Marquis kicking things off. Ted Lasso led the comedies with 4 Emmys in all. The Smash sitcom's feel-good first season earning honors for star Jason Sudeikis. There was even a tribute to the late Michael K. Williams. Yet despite categories that included Williams and Pose's Billy Porter, on last night's primetime Emmys, no performers of color won awards in acting categories.
But it wasn't all celebration. An 80-year-old trailblazing chess player is suing Netflix for defamation and invasion of privacy over a scene in The Queen's Gambit. According to a 25-page complaint filed in federal district court in California, she claims her career was belittled when they stated she's the female world champion and has never faced off against men, when in fact by 1968 she had played against many. Netflix has yet to respond.
Welcome back, everyone. Next to the latest school shooting, this time playing out in a Virginia high school. It took several hours until FBI and state troopers took custody of the suspect. ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas has the details.
Is the shooter still in the school?
Tonight, terrified families racing to Heritage High School in Newport News, Virginia, after 2 students were shot.
A very chaotic scene right here. Just stay away if you don't need to be here.
We were literally just stopping at the red light, just rushing through because we was trying to hurry up and get here.
Thurman Leonard relieved that his grandson Taekwon is okay.
After that one shot, it's like a couple seconds later, like a lot of shots started going off. They told us to go in the closets, lock the doors and get away from the windows.
2 students shot, both 17-year-olds.
I have a male that has been shot in the side of the face and a female that's been shot in the lower leg.
2 other students injured in the rush to get to safety.
They got him. They must got him.
In the name of Jesus.
A prayer circle forming outside the school. Police finally taking the suspect, who they say is also a juvenile, into custody about 3 hours after the shooting.
Pierre Thomas joins us now. Pierre, I know the school year has just started, but it seems like we've already covered several school shootings.
We have indeed, Lindsay. So far this calendar year, there have been at least 82 incidents of gunfire on school grounds, resulting in 21 deaths and 47 injuries nationally. So this is an ongoing problem. And the only good news about today in Newport News, no one died. And of those 2 students who were shot, there were no life-threatening injuries.
Pierre Thomas, our thanks to you. Now to the tax fraud case in New York against the Trump Organization, that's President Trump's family company, and its CFO, Alan Weisselberg. Both have pleaded not guilty to a 15-count indictment. Weisselberg appeared in court today where there were no cameras allowed, but ABC's Aaron Katersky was in the courtroom and joins us now for a bit of a debrief. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good to be here, Lindsay.
So, of course, prosecutors are accusing the Trump Organization of essentially compensating employees with housing and cars, perks like this, in order for the employees to avoid paying income tax. What more did we learn in court today?
We learned that Weisselberg may not have been the only one to allegedly take those perks from the Trump Organization in order to avoid, in Weisselberg's case, prosecutors say almost $2 million in income taxes. His defense attorney said today, Lindsay, that he expected other people to be indicted. He didn't name names, and prosecutors certainly haven't said anything publicly. But I think the defense attorney was trying to slow the case down, saying, hey, there's going to be some other indictments. Let's not rush this. And we here at ABC News have previously reported that Matthew Calamari, former President Trump's bodyguard at one point, and more recently as chief operating officer at the namesake business, he too has come under suspicion over these perks in what prosecutors have called a scheme, a 15-year scheme, they've alleged, to avoid income taxes on all these kinds of executive benefits.
And it looks like Weisselberg is really trying to put some daylight between him and the Trump Organization. But that's going to be tricky for him.
Prosecutors aren't really buying it. His defense attorney today, Brian Scarlatos, called Weisselberg collateral damage and said he was concerned that he was getting caught in this because of the Trump name. And we know that former President Trump has called this politically motivated. And Scarlatos noted, rightly so far, Weisselberg is the only one whose liberty is at stake because he could, in fact, go to prison for this if he's found guilty. But prosecutors weren't going to let Weisselberg off the hook as collateral damage. They say that when it comes to all the relevant financial information that's part of this case, as chief financial officer, Alan Weisselberg was the boss.
Do you think, because you talk about the potential for prison time, do you think that this case ultimately will go to trial?
You know, that's what they're planning for, and the judge today told the attorneys to mark it in their calendars for about a year from now. He said plan late August, early September for a trial. The way it looks right now, they didn't set a specific date. They'll do that later in July. But if that time frame holds, late August, early September, that puts it right in the mix of the 2022 midterm elections, and there will be the Trump bold-faced name front and center once again.
All right, Aaron Katersky, our thanks to you.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Imagine going through your adult life unable to read or write. Tonight, we introduce you to Robert Trevino, who dropped out of school in 5th grade to help feed his family. Now, decades later, he's finally learning to read and hopes to help others to do the same. Adult illiteracy is a national problem, but here's a stat that surprised us. In America's 4th largest city of Houston, 1 in 3 adults is functionally illiterate. ABC's Zareen Shah reports.
I always watch out for markers, you know, to get where I need to go, because I don't know names of streets and nothing. Remember the AutoZone, the Jack in the Box, and the muffler shop has been there for years, so I know I got to make a right to turn to my job. You know, not knowing how to read and write yet, but I'm going to get there one day. And, you know, that is my goal. Every school that I went to try to learn how to read and write, they didn't want to help me because they told me I was too far behind and they couldn't help me.
Robert Trevino dropped out of school in 5th grade. He got a job to help his mother put food on the table. But in the process, he sacrificed his education.
I lost something, but I gained something more. And that's by helping my mom, because she was always my joy. Feet, yeah.
Basic things were a struggle. Then 7 years ago, he got something while watching TV that changed his life.
They had it on TV, on the news, that there's an old lady, and she was 85 years old. She was getting her GED, and she said it's never too late to learn. And that lady became my rock to want to learn again.
That's when Robert found adult literacy education classes, a partnership between Houston's Mayor's Office for Adult Literacy and the Barbara Bush Houston Literacy Foundation.
A cow. I got that one. See, yeah.
He was not alone.
My classmates, when I get all happy and excited and, you know, because it gives me joy, my hands start lifting up and I start doing my hands like this, and they always say, oh, there he goes with the hands, he's going. Yeah.
According to a nationwide literacy study, 8.4 million adults are classified as functionally illiterate, meaning they lack the literacy necessary for coping with most jobs and everyday situations. And an astounding 43 million adults possess low literacy skills. But in Houston alone, America's 4th most populated city and home to over 2.3 million people, 1 in 3 adults is functionally illiterate.
It's a statistic that is clearly unacceptable, and we can do better, and we must do more for them.
1 out of every 3. How? How does that happen?
First, it starts in part by adults not having the skill set to help support their child adequately gain those pre-literacy skills needed for success. Secondly, we don't have an adequate early education program, both high quality early education and vast access. But we are seeing, particularly even in Houston, that in some of our most underserved, economically disadvantaged communities of color, have poorest performing schools. Having a kid come into school 2 years behind and giving them 1 year's worth of education is never going to catch them up. If kids are falling farther and farther behind, they start to lose hope. They become removed. They feel like their only avenue is to drop out. We call it a silent crisis because they don't feel like they have a voice.
The center is a no judgment zone.
They're just individuals that are trying to continue their lives. If they have that mentality that they want to continue, then I know we're doing something right. Literacy is so important. It's so important in lives.
She's a career navigator coach at the Adult Education Center, but just 5 years ago, she was a student.
I can just relate, not just, especially if with my parents, you know, it's hard, you know, for them to go through, excuse me. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry.
It's just hard to see these individuals, you know, go through this, through the struggle, because not a lot of people are aware of what people's struggles are, you know, and they're not going to come and tell you, you know, directly their story. You know, they want to feel that trust, you know, and usually that's what we feel, is they're trusting us with their lives.
Currently, the Adult Education Center serves an average of 200 adult students a semester and says they have an over 70% success in students reaching their education goals.
There's so many reasons why someone would want to learn how to read, but is it dangerous to be illiterate?
Yes, I believe it is dangerous, whether it be a documentation or just something that they're signing because someone comes up to you. I mean, this world, it's full of great people, but it's also full of bad people. You know, people that are looking to take advantage of others.
Robert says he experienced that firsthand. He tells us he was behind bars for 2 months after unknowingly confessing to a crime he says he didn't commit.
They kept telling me, I need you to sign this, and I asked them, well, can you read it out to me? Because I don't know what it says. I can't read and write. And the 2 times they told me, sign it if you want to go home. So I said, okay. So I signed it. I didn't know what, you know, and I didn't think nothing about my rights.
Struggles with adult literacy go far beyond Houston.
Even more on a national level.
Houston's mayor committing to helping the residents of his city.
That's systemic. That's not because people are lazy or because they don't want to work or because they're inferior, you know. Hell no, okay? It's simply because systemically we have left a lot of people behind. And now it's our jobs to do everything we can to help them to catch up.
Catch up and give back.
What's the biggest goal you have that you want to do when you can read perfectly?
Be able to teach others, because something that I never had.
You want to teach people like you?
Yes, and want to tell them, don't be afraid and don't be embarrassed, because I'm not. And I know if I can do it, I know other people can do it. 7. Oh man. And I'm gonna get better, because I want to get better.
Seeing him be able to read that sign, our thanks to Zareen for that. And before we go tonight, the image of the day, say it ain't snow. It may technically still be summer, but at Montana's Big Sky Resort, some parts got half a foot of snow overnight, and it is still snowing there. They're excited about it, though. Some of us here on the East Coast might be dreading it. For those keeping score, fall begins on Wednesday. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Next hour, we're staying on top of a few things, including the question, will young kids be able to get vaccinated before Halloween? And our look at education in America. The pandemic put a spotlight on some glaring inequalities in many of our schools, but we meet some unlikely heroes trying to fight all that.
It was an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new Hunt wherever you get your podcast.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline. Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it? Feel smarter,
feel better.
feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart that he did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people
Squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. The White House has announced a new plan to require all international travelers to show proof of full vaccination before boarding U.S.-bound flights starting in November. Under the plan, vaccinated travelers must also submit a negative COVID test result within 3 days of travel, but would no longer face a 14-day quarantine. Unvaccinated Americans returning to the U.S. must have a negative COVID test within 1 day of travel and another upon arrival. Retail pharmacy giant CVS says they have 25,000 job openings to fill. The hiring campaign is an effort to staff up pharmacies to deliver more COVID-19 vaccines, which may soon include boosters for anyone 65 and older, as well as this year's flu shot. The company has nearly 10,000 locations nationwide. The Department of Veterans Affairs now says LGBTQ veterans dishonorably discharged due to sexual orientation are eligible to receive full benefits. The announcement came on the 10th anniversary of the repeal of the controversial 1993 law known as Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which banned any LGBTQ service members who were open about their sexual orientation. The FDA will soon decide whether to okay the first COVID-19 vaccine for children between the ages of 5 to 11. Pfizer has reported findings that say that they show effective protection and minimal side effects for children. They're asking for emergency use authorization, and according to Dr. Anthony Fauci today, the final decision could come within weeks. Here's ABC's Eva Pilgrim.
Tonight, a critical step bringing younger children closer to vaccination.
1, 2, 3.
Pfizer announcing its vaccine is safe and effective for children ages 5 through 11. After giving more than 2,200 young participants a smaller dose, 1/3 the amount given to adults, the company says the vaccine caused minimal side effects, similar to those seen in adults and older children. And the antibody response with that smaller dose was at least as strong as it was in patients 16 to 25 with the full adult dose.
Since we know that 16 to 25-year-olds are protected, and antibody is a good measure of that protection, having matched that antibody response, we're likely to match the protection.
8-year-old Sebastian Preibel participated in the Pfizer trial at Duke, but doesn't know if he got the vaccine or a placebo. His first shot was on September 1st.
He did have a sore arm after it. He had a low-grade fever, but he's been fine.
You just gotta do it.
It's something that can help the world get back to normal, and no one wants COVID to go on forever.
Pfizer now plans to submit its trial data by the end of the month. The FDA could take weeks to give the green light.
I think there's a really good chance it will be before Halloween.
Vaccines for the young can't come soon enough, with more than 1 million children infected with COVID in just 5 weeks. And health officials warn they're seeing long hauler symptoms in 2 to 3% of child cases. Hudson Beard was a healthy 13-year-old in Montana when he got sick with COVID last fall. Months later, he was still in constant pain, asking Dr. Fauci for help at a forum.
Every day when I wake up, I have constant migraines, severe headaches, and I'm super dizzy. My stomach hurts. I vomit. No other doctors can help me. Can you help me?
We don't know enough about it, Hudson, for me to honestly tell you what's going to happen over the next couple of months to a year.
After months of physical therapy in and out of hospitals on multiple medications, Hudson finally turned a corner over the summer, and he's back in school, getting stronger every day.
My word to people is really listen to your children, and when they do have symptoms or they're not recovering from COVID, take action.
And tonight, millions more Americans could get their booster shot starting by the end of the week once the FDA and CDC sign off on an advisory panel recommendation for high priority groups, including Americans 65 and older, people at high risk of severe COVID, such as patients with obesity, diabetes, and high blood pressure, along with frontline workers like teachers and healthcare workers.
Our thanks to Eva. Next to the latest crisis on the border, this time the Biden administration is beginning to deport the thousands of migrants, mostly from Haiti, who are gathering in South Texas. ABC's Alex Porche has more from Washington.
This afternoon, Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas on the ground in Del Rio, Texas, viewing the growing migrant crisis firsthand.
It is tragic to see families, vulnerable individuals who've been deceived by treacherous and exploitative smuggling organizations. It is tragic and it is heartbreaking.
This morning, the first images of the Biden administration's massive deportation effort captured by our ABC affiliate, WPLG. Flights of migrants from Del Rio, Texas, returning to Haiti. An estimated 13,000 people amassed, many from Haiti, which remains unstable after the assassination of its president and a deadly earthquake last month. Others are from Mexico, South America, and Northern Triangle countries, sheltering underneath the Del Rio International Bridge on the Texas border.
This is completely and totally out of the norm of anything that we've ever seen.
DHS has responded by surging 600 extra border agents to the area to assist. The U.S. planning to ramp up to 7 expulsion flights daily starting Wednesday. ABC's Kenneth Moten is there on the ground.
This was the main point of entry for those migrants. Border Patrol officials say thousands of them, many with children, taking this narrow and treacherous path across the Rio Grande.
Migrants bathing in the river, crossing back and forth for food, makeshift shelters built to protect them from 100-degree heat. And then there's the COVID concern. This small border community overwhelmed by the migrant crisis.
We're a very welcoming and loving community, but, we can only provide so much.
Our thanks to Alex. Now to the rough ride on the stock market today. The Dow Jones down 614 points, recovering slightly after being down nearly 1,000 points earlier in the day. The tech-heavy NASDAQ index down 330 points as well. So what sparked the mass sell-off? Our chief business and economics correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis, joins us now. Rebecca, the stock market has been so volatile lately, ever since the pandemic began, I guess, really. But it's been on a fairly steady increase lately. So what drove today's dive?
Well, just a week ago, Lindsay, to your point, the stock market was at all-time record highs. What happened today, what set this off, was word that a Chinese real estate developer that is $300 billion in debt very likely is going under and won't make good on its debt payment later this week unless the Chinese government steps in and does something. Now, we have no idea what the Chinese government will do here, but it is a significant issue for the Chinese economy, which is one of the largest economies in the world. You factor that into the overall environment here in the United States, which is one that still sits on relatively precarious footing. You have COVID, you have the Delta variant, and you have these issues over inflation and rising prices here in the U.S. and the impact on consumers. All of that together factored into this sell-off, which was really precipitated by the news from China.
Yeah, and I've heard some liken it to the collapse of Lehman Brothers when that happened here. For the average American who's not really paying attention to the daily movements of the stock market, should there be concern about a steeper drop-off or about the broader state of the economy?
Well, to your point, Lindsay, about likening it to the Lehman Brothers example, yes, people remember real estate, the housing market here was at the center of the collapse. One of the pieces of news that economists take heart in is that in this case, China does not have a vast connection to the U.S. overall banking market. So what's happening to that company in China is not necessarily going to be as contagious as what happened to Lehman Brothers here in the U.S. However, there are still some concerns about, first of all, China being a significant economy in the world, and second of all, some of those other issues that I've raised. Inflation is still an issue here. The jobs market, while we've come a long way from the pandemic, we're still in one, and we still haven't recovered a lot of the jobs. That's the real question going forward. How quickly can the U.S. economy continue to pick up steam and recover? How much longer are we going to be dealing with inflation? We've heard from a number of companies signaling that it's going to last through the end of this year, that they'll continue to raise prices. But from a standpoint of your own 401k, that nest egg, at this point, it's down only a few percentage points from the all-time high that we were at just last week. So it's not a point yet where people should feel panic, Lindsay.
You probably heard the old adage, when China sneezes, the world catches a cold. We'll see how sick we all get, hopefully not too severely. Rebecca Jarvis, always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you, Liz.
Now to the digital divide in this country. ABC's Terry Moran takes us to Cleveland, Ohio, where the pandemic brought to light the glaring inequity on access to the internet for school children. And we meet the unlikely heroes. They're still at work to help bridge that gap. It's tonight's America Strong.
So remember when we built these?
Tina Kovac and 7th grader Natalia McFadden, reunited and in person this school year, get to work on their latest project.
So now we have 3 more M-Bots.
Kovac runs a donor-funded robotics team at Tremont Montessori in Cleveland. These children face so many challenges. 100% of the students in Cleveland public schools qualify as economically disadvantaged under state law. For Tina Kovac, herself a proud Cleveland native, giving these kids every opportunity is a personal mission.
When I was younger, school was everything. I grew up very poor. I didn't have a lot of role models at home. It was very chaotic, so school was my everything.
When the pandemic closed Cleveland schools, Kovac and Cleveland Metro School District CEO Eric Gordon faced an immense challenge, staying connected to the kids.
37,000 kids all sent home to the worst connected city in the country, the highest childhood poverty in the country. We don't have the devices to send home. They don't have the internet to be connected to.
The problem in large pockets of the city, everywhere highlighted in red on this map, fewer than 40% of residents in 2017 had access to high-speed internet. Many of them were living in dead zones. Even if a resident has the means to pay for it here, big telecom companies never built the infrastructure to connect them because low-income areas offered less profit potential. And one of the students living in a dead zone, Natalia McFadden.
So I would restart it, and then it would start again, and then I would be able to get on sometimes.
Stuck with an old laptop and slow internet connection, online school proved to be a challenge.
That was the most important thing, making sure that she was connected so that she can get her education.
We learned Natalia wasn't alone on the robotics team.
How many of you had problems at the beginning connecting to reliable high-speed internet or just getting on a device at all? Who had problems? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to say everybody, right?
So, using pandemic funding, the school district bought nearly 57,000 devices for students and 23,000 hotspots. And teachers like Tina Kovac mobilized outreach and getting them out to students.
One of the things that I love about Cleveland is that we endure.
And Eric Gordon found a new partner, the nonprofit group Digital C, located smack in the middle of the most unconnected part of Cleveland, dedicated to closing the digital divide. That's where we met CEO Dorothy Baunach.
When people talk about broadband access, people do think generally first, I think of rural areas, that there's nothing out there.
Absolutely.
But you're saying right here in a great American city.
Yes.
Tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
Can't get access.
And all we need to do is tap into that pipe that's under concrete.
And get to these neighborhoods.
And get to these neighborhoods, north and south.
Using existing fiber that's already in the ground, Digital C finds ways to connect those neglected neighborhoods and direct service to homes at low cost. Baunach is hopeful the big infrastructure bill moving through Congress will give a boost to their efforts.
You talk about it like it's a civil rights issue.
It is. It's a civil rights and human rights issue. Internet won't solve everything. It won't solve the poverty of Cleveland, but you won't get out of it without it.
At Tremont Montessori, Natalia McFadden and the rest of the robotics team are back at it in person. And after the struggle of the pandemic year, Tina Kovac sees a silver lining.
It was painful and it was stressful and it was hard, but it was necessary. It's something that should have been done 20 years ago to bring our kids up to, I mean, just the fact that they finally have one-to-one technology.
But the work isn't over in Cleveland. They say it takes a village and sometimes it takes a city of teachers and families, nonprofit leaders and administrators to keep the fight alive, close that digital divide, make Cleveland strong and America strong.
I think what the pandemic did was make people, again, unable to look away at the disparities. My job is to make sure that they don't turn their head again.
Terry Moran, ABC News, Cleveland.
Our thanks to Terry for that. And now to criminal justice. Jared Adams was just 17 years old when an all-white jury found him guilty of rape, and he was sentenced to 28 years in prison for a crime he did not commit. He spent 10 years in prison, including almost 2 years in solitary confinement, before he was ultimately exonerated with the help of the Wisconsin Innocence Project back in 2007. Adams tells his story and examines institutionalized racism in the justice system in his new book, Redeeming Justice from Defendant to Defender, My Fight for Equity on Both Sides of a Broken System. He joins us now. Thank you so much for doing so, Jared. I want to go back a bit to hear some of your story. At the age of 17, you were falsely accused of rape by a white woman with whom you had consensual sex. Take us back to that moment that you realized that you were falsely accused of a crime.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Lindsay. I really appreciate the opportunity to share, my story and my journey and redeeming justice on this platform. I was a kid, and I stress that and make a point of that in this book. I was a kid, had no experience at all with the law, single mother who couldn't afford to get me an attorney, and I found myself accused of a sexual assault, just after simply attending a party and having a consensual encounter. And what I realized in going through this experience was what we learned in school, what we saw on TV, is not how it played out in real life. And young black men accused in America never have the presumption of innocence.
And while you were on trial, you reassured your mother that she had nothing to worry about because you were innocent. Tell me about that conversation.
I remember having a conversation with my mother. It was right after the start of trial, because I remember turning around and looking at her. And I just remember how sunken her eyes were in her head and how those creases and wrinkles of anguish lined her forehead. And I said, Mom, I'm telling the truth. We don't have anything to worry about. And she looked at me, Lindsay, and she said, baby, you just don't get it. Emmett Till was telling the truth, and he ended up being killed. And it was that reality, that moment then and there, when I was no longer 17-year-old Jared Adams, that innocence was lost forever.
In your book, you describe how the justice system failed you and other black men. Give us some examples.
I'll give you a perfect example. So here it is. I am accused along with two other men. One of us is able to afford an attorney. Because my other co-defendant was able to afford an attorney, his attorney used those resources, got an investigator, filed motion after motion, and his conviction was ultimately, his conviction never happened. His his case was ultimately dismissed after we discovered the evidence of innocence was withheld. The problem is we were already found guilty, and we never got the opportunity to present the evidence because we had public defenders who didn't hire investigators, and we were left there to defend ourselves with nothing.
You spent almost 2 years in solitary confinement. In the book, you write, and I'd like to quote here, I used to associate only the word segregation with racism, with my forebears, with the Mississippi cotton field where my relatives toiled, broken and beaten emotionally, mentally, and physically. Today, again, segregation, where I will live for the next year in isolation, apart from the population, in the hole, in a hole in hell. Certainly chilling sentiments expressed there. Let's talk about your mental health during that time. What did it take for you to survive a year in what you describe as hell?
At the opening of the book, Redeeming Justice, I dedicate the book to my aunt and my mom. They used a staggered approach where they would write letters and mail me encouragement. You know, every other day I would get a letter from them. And my aunt, I remember her telling me while going through this process, she says, listen, I can't tell you when this is going to end. This is going to be tough. But what it's going to require you to do is acknowledge that your body may be physically confined, but don't ever let them incarcerate your mind. And that was the approach that I took. I decided that I would live and prepare each day unjustly incarcerated as if I was going to be released the next. And so that played a huge part in me being able to remain mentally strong. But I still wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for that encouragement and me also taking mental health care seriously after my conviction was reversed and I was released.
And Jared, 10 years into your sentencing, you find out that there's evidence proving your innocence, vital information that had been withheld from you. Despite this concrete evidence in your time served, you still had to pay a $10,000 bond to leave prison. Two questions really there. Why did you still have to pay that money? And also tell our viewers what the evidence was.
So when your conviction is reversed, the court has the opportunity to release or retry you. And so in this situation, the prosecutor's office thought that they were going to make me an offer to plead to something, didn't say what exactly it was, but then I would have time served and they would release me. But what that would do is absolve them of any wrongdoing, and it would rob me and my mother of the vindication that we deserved. And so that part of it is just an example of how our system believes more in finality than it does justice. They were willing to get me to plead guilty to something that they ultimately dismissed all the charges to and against, and plead guilty to it knowing I was innocent. And you know what, Lindsay? It happens time after time after time. The only difference is I was able to get through, become an attorney, and document it in a book.
And what was your evidence that proved you innocent ultimately?
We were accused of an outlandish tale of sneaking up a flight of stairs, gang raping someone, and fleeing a building. The only problem was the police had a statement from a college student who was there the entire time and who undermined the allegations and supported our version of events from the very beginning, which was that we were invited to this room. We were invited to this party, and we were never, ever a part of any crime that night.
After you were released from prison, you decided to become a lawyer to help others who are also wrongly accused. Now that you've seen the justice system from both sides, what do you think would be the most important first step toward addressing structural issues within the criminal justice system?
We have to put people who are directly impacted and who have been directly impacted in leadership, decision-making positions. We need to put people who have been directly impacted, both those who have experienced wrongful convictions and also the family members who've supported people through decades of that wrongful conviction, in leadership positions to address these issues so that they do not just continue to become celebrations at the end and reversal of the convictions, but they become precedent to prevent them from ever happening.
Jared Adams, we thank you so much for your time. Redeeming Justice from Defendant to Defender, My Fight for Equity on Both Sides of a Broken System is now available wherever books are sold. And still to come, the boxing superstar who now wants to run for president of the Philippines, and the community banding together to help the survivors of Ida.
extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcast.
The most powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline. Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
All right, here we go. You ready? Let's do it.
Yes, it's the show America wants and America needs right now.
This is What Would You Do? Let's go. How are you?
How cute. Yeah. So what will you be watching Saturdays on ABC News Live?
What would you do?
Hey, I guess I just found out. The What Would You Do Marathon, 12 to 6 Eastern, every Saturday on ABC News Live.
My favorite show.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people
squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. Welcome back. We're tracking several international headlines at this hour. A student opened fire in a Russian university in the city of Perm, killing 6 and wounding 24 more before he was forcibly taken into custody. Russian news outlets reported students jumping from second-story windows. The alleged gunman is alive but hospitalized. Authorities have said little about a possible motive. It is the 3rd deadly school shooting in Russia since 2018. A mass evacuation is underway in Spain after a volcano erupted Sunday on the Atlantic Ocean island of La Palma. Thousands of residents have been told to get out, and as many as 100 homes have already been destroyed by lava as it oozes toward the sea. The eruption followed several small earthquakes. No injuries have been reported. The last eruption in La Palma took place in 1971 and lasted 3 weeks. Filipino boxing superstar and Senator Manny Pacquiao said he will run for president in 2022, slamming incumbent President Rodrigo Duterte for corruption and vowing to fight for change. Duterte is constitutionally forbidden from seeking a second 6-year term, but has been nominated as a vice presidential candidate for a running mate who has so far declined to enter the race. Hurricane Ida has impacted so many families, and tonight we're hearing from one family who survived the devastation and how their community helped them get through it. Ike Ejachi has more.
When Janice and Marlin Valley purchased this house last year, they knew it would be a forever home for their large blended family.
I would go through every room and I could just see us living there. It was just such a blessing.
But as the remnants of Hurricane Ida slammed into Cranford, New Jersey, their dream home began to crumble.
At 2:30 in the morning, my son rushed into my room and he says, "Mom, there's water in the basement." It was just pouring in through the windows.
Their 17-year-old son, Mateo, seen here in this now viral video, helping the family clear out the basement, when just moments later,
I'm hearing crackling. The wall buckled. Within seconds, there was 6 feet of water in the basement.
Mateo, safe, just narrowly missing that tidal wave. Then you hear his voice, screaming for his mom, an older brother, Joel, who were trapped on opposite ends of the basement with only about 4 inches of air left to breathe.
I just remember opening my eyes and being to the ceiling. And I knew that my family couldn't go down the stairs to get me. So it kind of seemed hopeless. And so I just resigned myself to, knowing that that was going to be it.
Marlon and Mateo ran outside, grabbed this umbrella, punched open the side window, and pulled Joelle to safety. Then grabbed Janice from another window.
We sat on the front stoop here, and we just looked at each other like, oh my gosh, we're alive.
First responders rescuing the family from their home by boat.
I wish I knew their names. I see their faces, but I don't know their names. But they were just so wonderful.
Half of the town underwater. The damage immeasurable, but the spirit of the locals unwavering. Over the next few days, volunteers visited home after home, pulling sheetrock out of basements, donating food and school supplies, helping each other pick up the pieces of their lives, especially the valleys. A GoFundMe raising over $35,000 in less than a week for the family to offset some of the damage insurance won't cover.
I woke up the next morning to see it, and it was over 10 grand.
Strangers helping strangers.
That support has not made us feel any sadness. We're so grateful.
What an example of kindness. Our thanks to Ike. And Lowe's has also had a big surprise for Janice and her family, donating $15,000 to help with their rebuilding efforts. That is our show for tonight. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.